Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So I'm back on my generational farm, and as with the expectation that I've certainly had with this competition or this version of gameplay within FSN, this is requiring a significantly higher amount of strategy and planning than honestly I'm thinking anybody anticipated. One of the things I'm going to preface, because I'm going to get into some pretty heady stuff as I talk through this, because I've spent, 4 to 6 hours running a lot of models and analyses, and the conclusions I'm going to present are based on that. And given the fact that I do this kind of stuff for a living, and a lot of people say I'm pretty good at it, I'm going to feel that the likelihood of me being wrong is less than the likelihood of me being right. But I'm also humble enough to understand that nobody knows everything, and someone may come up or think of something in a way that I haven't come across. It's just obviously, as I think any of us will understand, when you have decades of experience doing things, you get surprised less and less. It's just the very nature of things. Like like it or not, you've seen it all. At this point, I'm going to continue to press along for this year with the decision I've made. So one of the key things, if you're not familiar with finance, there's a concept called sunk cost. And in any kind of business, that really comes into play. And in this game, right now, the way this is set up, this could destroy somebody who doesn't understand it, because they're going to feel, I've made this decision, I've put money into it, I've bought equipment, I'm committed to this. And the difference between a success and a failure in business is you cannot make a decision based on that. Because if you ultimately determine that the direction you're going is not sustainable and is wrong, continuing to throw money at it just hastens the demise. It doesn't give you the opportunity to somehow magically stumble over a solution that isn't there. All that said, where I'm at right now is I do not think, given the constraints we have, that you can actually be successful with crops. The costs are just too high. And really, the one decision in the modeling hinges and everything pivots on is the fact that we are not able to carry equipment over from generation to generation. Because what that changes in the model is that equipment now is, like it or not, it's just like buying seed or fertilizer at this point. I can't get any long-term benefit out of equipment like I normally would in a farming situation if I've got simply 7 to 10 years to use equipment and then I need to scrap it and start over. It'd be one thing if the equipment retained its value. It does not. It substantially decreases. Even this product here. So I'm constantly looking for sales, by the way, so that's why this is up. But this planter, even though I bought it on sale and I've barely used it, you can see I paid about $4,500. It's immediately worth $1,600. Basically, I immediately have equipment drop to 33% of its value. So if you think about that, and you buy a harvester for say $200,000, and you can sell it for $60,000, how are you going to make that up when you have very small fields that are generating at best $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 off of them? And that's not profit. That's the income you're getting. You then have all the expenses, of which now equipment is one of them. And it's a substantial one. So if you look at the finances here, the leasing costs just to get things into the crop here, into the ground and so forth, and do the work are $26,000. Keep in mind that basically, it's not entirely going to be accurate what I'm going to say, because we have some hourly costs in there. But at a minimum, that's basically just 5%. So just for shits and grins, let's go ahead and say it's 10% of what I would have paid. So I've basically utilized $260,000 of equipment. I've actually probably used substantially more than that. But, the leasing makes it affordable. That's why I think 10% is too high in the model when I've gone ahead and done that. And in the process, you can see this is all the income I've gotten off of it. I've made more in contracts than I've made off my own fields. And that's, unfortunately the reality of how things operate, the way this is set up right now. So I think it's important that I accept the reality of that. Only path forward I can see. And so I may be at a disadvantage at this point with some other players who, again, may have the same process and have gone through the same analysis. I just haven't talked to them directly. But there's a couple people on our map that appear to be doing grass work. I still think it's going to be a slog, and I still think at best it's going to be challenging. I'm honestly right now of the opinion, and I'm actually just putting this down on record at this point so that I myself can learn from it and compare and see, was my analysis on or off when we get to the end of this generation. I'm starting to think anyone who basically can leave this map without having lost money at the end of the generation is going to be leading. Because at this point, with the equipment pivot, it's very, very difficult. You just aren't going to be able to make up that difference. I'm not seeing it. So I'm going to run through this, because at this point it would be foolish to kind of half-ass the crops. So I'm going to do everything I can to maximize things here and see if what I'm seeing as the throughput of these fields changes. But I'm also basing the model on the fact that I've got 60 years of farming simulator data on these kind of fields and these kind of farms as to what exactly I'm going to get from a profit level. And because these are just base maps in the game, there's nothing tweaked that's going to change the financial calculations. So I would be floored if something different happens in this case. So, at the end of the day, when I harvest both of these fields, and keep in mind, that means I'm putting more equipment cost in here because I'm going to have to lease the harvester and I'm going to have to do whatever. And for those, again, who are thinking, well, you should have just bought the equipment and the problem would go away. No, it wouldn't, because that's still an expense. Like it or not, it's an expense. It's no longer an investment if I can't keep the equipment. And that, as I said, is a crucial difference. So when we're analyzing this, we need to understand the rules we're operating within and the economics we're operating within, and that's the reality of it. So it's a long discussion, but I wanted to kind of get things out there of where my head's at. So my plan right now is go ahead and do this, but I'm likely switching to grass work for next year. And what I'm still working out is what equipment I need to own and what equipment I'm still going to lease, because I still think, well, and again, the mathematical model is clear. If I'm paying 5% of the purchase price, if it's something I don't use that often, it's ridiculous to purchase it. Anyway, so what I'm doing now at this point is to maximize this field, or this yield. I need the lime so that I can get the pH up. And then you can see I've got weeds here, so I need to spray. Now, the interesting thing, and I'm pretty sure, because now I'm at stage 5 of 7 on these sunflowers. For whatever reason, field 41 doesn't have weeds, field 40 does. And I have talked to people on various servers running the map. Field 40 and 41 are behaving the same way on multiple servers, so it seems something in the map that maybe field 41 just doesn't have weeds. So it's just sheer luck of the draw, or maybe it's just this first year it doesn't have weeds. We'll see what happens. So the situation is right now, if we look at this, I've turned grass on. Normally I have it off. You can see I've got 3 of the 5 of us have decided to do grass. 2 of us have decided to do crops. I think the ones that have decided to do crops, may be having a problem that we can't dig out of, at least in this generation. We might be able to do something in the future. I'm not going to get burned again by the decision with the Landini. I don't know that it operates with everything, so I'm skipping that. I'm considering this the lowest priced tractor that is reasonable to use. So at this point, because I need to drive through the fields, I'm going to have to go with narrow wheels. Because I don't want to run the possibility of spending an extra hour that I don't need to spend, and therefore paying an additional hourly cost for leasing, I need to have GPS on because I need to be as efficient as I can on the fields. All right, so I realized I picked the wrong tractor. This one's only available in 75 horse. But you know what? I think I can get away with that because spraying and spreading, there's no horsepower requirements for those other than pulling things. I'm just thinking through. The other thing I realized, I need money right now, so let me borrow a bit because I'm going to have to buy product as well, so let me do that. And the other thing, obviously, we're dealing with loan interest because I only had $5,000. It's pretty small, but obviously this is going to go up. So one of the things I hope I don't forget at the end, when I'm done today, if somehow I have a balance that allows me to pay $5,000 back, I need to do that so that I'm not incurring loan interest that I don't need. Okay, so basically 5% of $7,000, which is going to be the base price difference of these tractors, is going to be $350. So it's going to be ridiculous to not take that risk and go ahead and do that. So I am, at this point, I'm going to, yeah, that's 5,000, so I don't want to do that. But that's another 5,500. So yeah, this will give me more. I don't know, the 10 horsepower is going to matter because obviously the difference between 75 and 96 is substantial. Difference between 96 and 107, not so much. So I need to make sure I can do. Okay, well then now the problem I have is I can't do narrow tires on this tractor. So this tractor becomes a non-starter. So now I'm back to, do I go higher? Let's see, I guess let me check my wheels. Okay, I can do narrow tires here. Again, at this point, it's 60, it's 9,000, it's only 4,000, but it's only a small amount. All right, so I'm at 75. Yeah, I think that does it. I'm going to worry about a weight because it looks like it's just a 300 or 500 weight. I can always rent a weight or come back and do that if I need to, I think. The only thing I'm worried about is if the sprayer somehow is going to be, no, but the sprayer's dragged. It's not hanging off the back, so never mind that. So that'll be fine. I don't have any front connections here before the job I'm doing. I don't need that. So at this point, okay, it's going to cost me $38.50. So the issue is if I take more than an hour, which is why I'm doing the GPS, the GPS is going to add basically, what, it does add $750, but a little bit more than that because it's 5.1%, but that's still half of $1,500 to just try to make sure that I can get things done. All right, you know what? Because every minute counts, I'm going to actually figure out the spreader I'm doing first. I know the sprayer because there's only one option. But this was the spreader I had looked at. Again, for $250. It's kind of ridiculous not to go, or even $1,300 to go to the highest capacity. I need narrow wheels so that I don't destroy my crop, and I want to spread as far as I can. So, let's see, lease, yeah, that'll be fine. It's 8,000, it's $400, but I think, again, to try to avoid the possibility of then incurring a $1,585 charge hourly on the tractor, it makes more sense to spend the $400 to increase my width here. Okay, so we're at 2824 there. And again, it's work time, so I suppose my concern on the tractor is less concerning there. All right, so we're going with 100 narrow tires, GPS. That was the configuration we had, 3850. All right, so now I need to get to this location. That is really big, but these things don't indicate that they have any kind of a horsepower constraint. I may find out that they do just based on weight, but we'll see. Alright, so there we go. At least it all connects. I'm just going to have nightmares about that, you know, going on with what I did. And then I need to go find lime, which I think the closest lime station is... Alright, I had these before, now it's these locations. So I believe that's going to be the one that makes the most sense for me down here. Alright, so we're going to head down that way. The challenge, however, now is I don't know how much lime I need for these fields. Now, lime is cheap, but I'm really... You know, I don't want to be storing pallets and pallets. We're also trying to not create some server instability issues. So what I don't want to do is have thousands left, but I'd be very surprised if I don't. So I need to come over the bridge. I know that. So let me... trying to drive with the view I have, and the wheel is alright, go by me, because otherwise we're just going to hang up. So I need to get over the river. You know, and so the issue ends up happening, as we've talked about, with the work time. The tractor is the biggest issue. So, and because of that, we're basically down to a 6 to 7, might even be as low as 5 rentals. It'd be cheaper to buy the tractor type thing. So when I'm in the sales process, I'm really looking for a tractor, and I'm preferring a small tractor, but I think what I'm going to ultimately need to do is go ahead and perhaps get just bite the bullet on that and buy a new tractor. So doing some quick math, because we'd be able to use that other tractor that we did roughly to do basic grass work with a fermenting silo, which is what these folks have that are operating on a couple of the fields. The fermenting silo costs $60,000, so you know, that's $60,000 on its own, and then equipment-wise, you need about another 100. So I'd need $160,000 of equipment. All right, so let's see. So we're going to get this going here. I'm going to fill up on 14,000 of lime. If I don't use that much, I will be amazed. It's just, you know, the challenge becomes, because every minute of working time counts, driving back here is just going to be too costly. So I'm literally going to come over here and turn around. And the good news is I'm not really struggling to move. So that would have been my biggest concern, because, you know, we're spinning 2 little pieces of metal on the back, hence there's no horsepower requirement other than whatever it really takes to pull this weight. Alright, so I'm going to turn on my GPS, and then when I head over the bridge, I'm going to set my line there. Now here we can see even this little bit. It's having some fun here with 100 horsepower. But, you know, the difference becomes if I own that tractor, I don't really care what the working hours are at that point on the tractor. It's just my physical real time that I need to worry about. And if I don't have the time to do it, I have a different issue. But you can see they've got silage in their trailer there, so they're doing what I'm going to be doing next, because I think that's the only way to potentially make things. But you got to keep in mind, you're selling silage for $150 per 1,000 liters. This is not a massive money maker, but it's the only realistic money maker I think that exists, because grass regrows, and so you could make a lot of benefit with that without worrying about anything else. And again, this is going to be a little bit disjointed in this video because I need to focus on running, because I'd love to get all this work done in an hour. Certainly no more than 2 for this tractor, because I need to keep the lease cost as low as possible. And this is part of what we're going to determine as well. Gotta be kidding me, come on. Alright, I'm stuck on that tree. So, because I want to get through and again, if I miss, this is where, again, I need to be realistic. While I'd love to get every inch of my field taken care of, spending 2 minutes repositioning my... Okay, obviously this is not... Okay. This will be fine, although... Alright, hold on. God. I did that, and then it didn't work, so... Alright. So let me get this... This is just, this is the fumbling that causes all kinds of problems. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, just to try to, again, minimize my wasted time, is I'm going to run the edge here. I'm going to do that on both fields so that I, in essence, have headlands where I have to turn around. And it's okay being a little bit inefficient here for the time situation. The precision farming keeps me from wasting it on the road. If you look back, if you missed that in the video, even though I was spreading, I wasn't spreading. So now obviously I need to be careful here, although I am on narrow tires, so I'll be okay. I'm not going to destroy any crops. Alright, and then we'll run up to the other edge. I'm going to run down that side. This is literally 30 seconds. I'm just kind of like, should I be spreading here? But I may change my line when I get on this field, knowing what it looks like on this end, that I've basically got 20% of my width on this end. I may decide to move my line across the road once I go over there, because if I can move it that amount, I'm going to have one less pass at this speed. So now you'll see when I get here, it stops, and now it picks up again. And that's the precision farming efficiently keeping us operating. And so similarly, I don't have to turn anything off here, because it's going to be able to sense that I've covered it. I'm probably going to have missed a tiny bit there. That's all right. And then this will flow, and I'm not going to worry about that corner, because that's just, well, maybe I'll just let it run as I swing around here, and that will work. And then I want to go that way, and then run back. So I'm not really in any, feeling I'm in any danger with the spreader of being an hour, but my challenge is I'm trying to get the spraying and the lime done in an hour, so that I'm also only paying for an hour of tractor time. So if I go with grass, that investment of that used piece of equipment is also going to have been a waste, because I can't plant grass with it. So now again, leasing, it would have been close, I think, because I think it's a $15,000 piece of equipment new. Yeah, no, it wouldn't have been, because that's only going to be like $700, but then I had the hourly additions on there and so forth that I would have had, so it's not going to be, it's certainly a smaller issue than, say, having to have had to change tractors because of the Landini not connecting. Alright, and once again, this is one of those, I'm not going to get that strip for one row of sunflowers. I'm not going to go do that and incur that cost, because it's just not going to generate enough additional. And honestly, no, I guess the precision farming is noticing that I'm not going that far over, but I was going to say it may not even know that I've done that. Alright, so yes, I am going to reposition here, because I can definitely get much less done, or much more efficiently done, and then cut that bottom piece off versus what I had, because obviously the road itself is even bigger. You know, because what I could have done is spread down the road and covered both fields, but that little bit doesn't make sense, because this should hopefully eliminate a full pass for me in aggregate across the fields. Alright, so you ever played speed chess? This is Speed Farming Simulator. You know, you're just trying to be as efficient as possible, because the clock is always running. Now, the one thing that this, you know, and this is again where the thinking almost comes to this base level of absurdity. Is it considered working hours if I'm standing still but the engine is running? I think the answer to that is yes. So the thing is, like, I'm thinking I could perhaps stop the engine, like when I go into the store and go and get the sprayer, get the herbicide I need, and you know, it might be a minute or two, but that minute or two could be the difference between nearly $1,600 of costs that I do or do not suddenly have. You know, because again, on the surface it seems to me that, you know, I'm spending 10 minutes liming these fields, like, and I think the sprayer is wider. I think this is only 18 meters. The sprayer is 24, because I do know you can expand the width of the sprayer, but it's only 4 meters. And at that point, with a 24 meter reach, I don't think that's necessary. The biggest challenge I'm going to have, however, is you can't see the weed spray as easily, but we're also likely not to have a problem. I am going to try. That did not take, even though I'm locked in. Sometimes the GPS does stuff like that. Alright, I think 3 more passes in this field will be done. More importantly, if I can do it without running out of lime, that's going to be the most important thing. So, I mean, we're not applying a ton, which again is the beauty of precision farming. I think I'm going to be okay. But obviously, the proof is in the pudding. I learned a very interesting thing about that the other day, that for probably my British friends, who I think have created that phrase, is probably well known. But I never knew that the actual phrase is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We've just always used the proof is in the pudding, and I guess the eating is implied or something, like, but the actual phrase is that, and it makes sense, but, you know, therefore, like for something like this, using that phrase doesn't make a lot of sense, because, you know, I'm not eating my farming equipment, so it suddenly makes it seem like it's wrong to use that phrase in this context, but I'll use it nonetheless, because at the end of the day, the proof will be, and can I get to the end here? And I certainly will be able to. So, and the nice thing is, I think the pallets of lime hold more than 1,000 liters, so I should be okay with emptying this and having one pallet on the ground. So, you know, and that's the reality that we're going to have, is we're leaving things on the map because we can't even afford to put structures up because of the costs of those things. Like, the structures have to be income producing, and storage buildings are not for anything. So, you know, we're going to have to balance the map impact with that. Alright, so there you go. Put it way further out, but I think it's because that's my spreading. So now I'm going to return this. So then we know we don't have anything more on the Breedle. I need my tractor on to get back to the shop. I need to go the right way so that I don't waste time. But then once again, once I get there, I am going to turn this thing off in the hopes that at least at minimum there, even though I'm sitting in it, the working time calculator stops running because I'm not actually running the engine anymore. So, you know, the leasing choice does create the situation where you have to basically plan out your work and try to then minimize things, which is why, again, the tractor just becomes kind of one of those challenges where I think I could lease the tractor and still do well the other way, but the problem ends up being, like, it just creates this stress that isn't necessarily needing to be there. Now, the problem is I need See and Spray to increase my environmental score. I also need narrow tires. So this is the configuration I need of this. So 4,692. So this is a perfect example. But I'm doing this at this point. I'm almost second guessing myself. Like, there's no way that the increase in my crop is ever going to be $4,692. You know, even if I lose 15% yield, like, this doesn't make any sense, just to prove a point. So I'm gonna second guess this, which means I'm immediately now going to, well, let me think. So right now my environmental score, and again, my working time shouldn't be moving. If I'm wrong, I guess I run the risk here doing this that I have a problem. So this is my situation. My pH value now is going to go up to the max. So I'm going to get 15 on that. My nitrogen should also go up to 15 because I went ahead and did that with, you know, the appropriate equipment. Precision farming is on. This is the thing that's going to hit me. The weed control won't go, but you can see the tillage is 10. The soil sampling is 15. I've got those max. So I'm going to get 25 here. I'm going to get another 30. You know, I'm going to get 50. I'm going to be sitting at 85. We're talking about a difference now of, well, the problem is it may go down to 70 because what it may do is throw this whole 30 out if I do nothing, But if I go and at this point, I think I have to spray. And if I spray, I think I'm potentially a 10. Right. So I took the time again because I'm operating under the assumption that since I'm not running the tractor, I'm not using working time at this point. So it still cost me $1,759 to just lease a regular sprayer. Plus, I'm buying $2,400 in herbicide, of which, with a base sprayer, I may use hundreds. I think with the See and Spray, I'd be lucky if I used 100 liters on the fields. See and Spray is that efficient. But we're now in the situation again where not rolling equipment over absolutely must play a point in my decision making. I cannot consider that See and Spray equipment an investment because there's no way I would make up that cost, even of leasing it at this point, with the benefits I'm going to get. So if I don't, so going back to here, the lowest this is going to get is 10. It doesn't go to 0, so I might lose 5, so I'd be down at 80%, which is still pretty good because you can see my average at 59 is already giving me a 3% bonus to my sell prices. And again, I'm going to get some massive jumps here. Everything else is already baked in the cake here. I've got my 45 plus my almost 20 there. 16 or 17. With the 8.9. So yeah, it's another 17, and that's what's getting me to that kind of 59 average. And the challenge here is, once again, like the nitrogen and the pH don't change until you harvest. So I should see that value change once we pull these sunflowers off the field. But because I'm not even going to make up, let's be generous and say I got $10,000 of crop of sunflowers off field 40, which would be high because basically with the canola and sunflowers are a bit better, but not substantially than canola in profit per acre. So the canola is probably a good example. Now the canola, I barely got $5,000 in sale off of that. I mean, we can get the exact amount again. 5,873 is what I got off that field. So I'd be nearly doubling my harvest income. At this point, if I'm getting 3%, that means I would be getting an additional $300 onto my crop because of the bonus. Once I'm at like 80%, which is where I think I'm going to be, I'm probably going to be closer to 10%. But even so, at best, I'm probably looking at $1,000 to $1,200. And I'm going to be intentionally deliberate in showing you the numbers so that you understand the financial decisions behind all this. The cheapest option I have to weed at this point is $1,700. If I had mechanically weeded, I could have maintained myself at 15 instead of 10. This may have made some sense. $484. I know I have enough time. I'm going to drive back to the field now because I don't want to hop back or run back because that'll take longer. And I can return this tractor any place I'm at. But I'm going to go verify because the last thing I want to do is say, oh, I can't, and then suddenly be back on my field and realize, oh, I could have. But I think at this point, because the weeds are at medium, and the reason I did that is I felt, well, if I'm going to do this, I'll do See and Spray because I know that gives me the highest environmental bonus rather than mechanical weeding, which I thought mechanical weeding was worse, but actually it's better than spraying. So yeah, weed, medium, I need herbicide. I can't mechanically remove weeds. So at this point my decision is made. I return that. No tractor, no equipment that's leased, no more money leaving my coffers. That's the most important thing. And then the other thing is everything here is perfect. pH value is perfect. Nitrogen is perfect. We're going to see the same thing on the other side. The only difference is we're not going to see any weeds, and hopefully they don't appear. Again, I talked about rolling. It's a 3% bonus. You can see that specifically in the numbers. My potential yield's 125. I'm expected to get 122%, especially with renting a roller, let alone buying a roller. And again, rollers require heavy horsepower, so we'd be talking about a very expensive tractor to roll the field. It'd certainly be more than 100 horse, especially to get things done in an hour or less. Just absolutely not worth it. Now here, we've got a 9% difference because of the weeds. So once again, we're potentially talking about $1,000 switch. It's that margin of error that we're talking about, because again, it's like, well, if I did that, like See and Spray is certainly out because of the 4600. Like, there's no way I can make up 4600. But that's the thing. I get a 6% improvement here, or a 5% improvement, and so that's $500. And then, it might have been $1,000 on the other. So again, maybe mechanical weeding would have made sense. But right now, it does not. I'm assuming this thing is going to be too heavy to move by hand. So at some point, the harvester can push it or whatever. I had meant to move it with a tractor, but oh well, it's there. So we have some lime if and when we need it in the future. But at this point, this is what I can do so far. But the logic, again, in summary, very quick summary, is what I'm going to find, and we'll look at our real numbers again now. So now if I go to my vehicle leasing cost, I'm at let's roughly say $33,000 that I've put in, of which I've gotten almost $6,000 back. So now we're down to 27. I'm going to have to lease the harvester and the header again to get these sunflowers off, and the trailer and a tractor. So this again, the constant use of the tractor is what starts to make it, that it's just better to buy the tractor at some point. Let me check on the off chance, but these don't usually change that fast. They're not. Hold on. I'm wondering, is this? No, this is a silage compactor. Okay. I normally probably wouldn't even do a grass roller. I know that helps with things and so forth, but like I said, the fact that equipment can't be an investment because of the model that we have makes it, I think, foolish still. I can't find a model that shows that it makes sense to do those marginal things like any kind of rolling or anything, because you're just not getting a big enough difference, because you have to treat that as I'm treating the lime. The lime is a direct cost. If I do not make up that cost in my crop income, I'm losing money. This is all a flat profit and loss statement at this point, which the game is already calculating for you. Because we're doing this in game, again, we can write off a good amount of this because we will recover this with our land sale. If I'm making the most cynical comment I can make of how I was feeling when I was going through 6 hours of modeling, I think the person that would do best in this competition the way it is now is the one who put all their money in land and then did nothing. Because I think right now, operating is such a razor-thin position that you make any mistake, for example, like figuring out that the Landini won't connect to something, and then suddenly you have to eat that cost. That's going to be the margin of error, I think, between any kind of profit in this first generation or not. And then the ongoing problem, so let's be clear, The problem doesn't change because we move to a new map. The scenery changes. The financial model is exactly the same. The crops are going to behave the same way. Everything's going to operate the same way. So unless the rules in some way are changed and the constraints are changed, this is what we're operating on. And until we find a way to snap out of something, it's not going to happen. And so I think with grass work, because the grass grows, because you're not putting in seed, you theoretically don't even need to fertilize. You basically could avoid supply. And so once you have the equipment, other than at that point, if you're owning it, it's fuel and repair. So, which is why I'm still going back, where I think things like mowers and other things, it may not make sense to buy, but the challenge ends up being, again, the frequency now of grass, because grass is going to, at a minimum, I'm going to be able to get grass off the field 4 times a year, 3 times a year if I'm really being conservative. But I think it's just going to grow it every 3 days, no matter what. If I've got to rent the mower 4 times a year, 3 times a year, once again, I hit that 20 point very quickly. So, hold on, I think I didn't realize. Oh no, just someone showed up and left. I just saw the little bubble. I wanted to make sure someone wasn't trying to talk to me. So, so that's where I'm at. So the thing is, but then you're making $150 per 1,000 liters of silage. And that's perhaps, let's just kind of take a peek at this. Fluctuations, I mean, you're not getting above 200. Sometimes this model's off a little bit, but right now, we're in that, getting in that top space. Well, I guess we're at the lowest space right now because we're in August, but and that does work pretty well now, but you're not going to be making a ton. And so once again, if you think about that, you need $100,000 of equipment if you were to buy everything. And I may not have said that when I was throwing out those numbers, because I was just so focused on not running out of time with a tractor. So you have $100,000 in equipment, you have $60,000 in the fermenting silo. Just with the $100,000 at around 150, because again, you want to run a financial model at a conservative level. You want basically to run the model in the worst case scenario. If all I can do is get the worst price that I'm likely to get, can I be profitable? Or at least break even. You need 666,000 liters of silage off these fields just to pay for equipment. And let's be clear, that's just to pay for your purchase of your equipment. You are now going to be incurring wear and tear. You're going to be incurring gas. There's going to be additional costs. So that number goes up to something additional. And because, again, I have not needed to model to that level before. I don't have data for how much fuel my tractor's going to use to go around these fields once, but you can be darn sure I am likely going to start collecting that in this series for this information, because it is that razor thin of a margin. There have been some comments made about contracts are only worth a few $1,000s. I think this is going to come down to a few $100s. I think that is how tight this thing is, and I will contend that is solely based on the single decision that we cannot keep equipment. If we could keep equipment, the financial model has to be completely redone. But right now, that is the biggest tentpole that determines what happens. And that is a cost that is substantial and very, very difficult to overcome, is what I'm starting to see. And that is why when I started this episode, I said, I don't think you can make money with crops. And part of the reason is it's $1,800 for fertilizer. It's $800 for seed. If I'm down to a margin of hundreds or thousands of dollars to make any kind of profit, I can't afford to put $1,800 of fertilizer down anywhere. Because that's the situation we're in. We could take 250,000 off of this because we're going to get basically most of that back when I sell the land back. That's the benefit. But all these losses here, for the cedar, I'm going to get some of that back when I sell it. I'm not selling that yet because until I'm 100% certain I'm stepping away from crops. Like, again, that would be a hasty, foolish decision to go ahead and do that and then suddenly determine, oh, I do need a planter. But I can't plant grass with that right now. So, but I should have a much, much clearer picture once I see what the sunflowers are, because there's really only 3 viable crops in my opinion. Cereals just don't make sense at this point. They're too low of an income, and again, it's only $100-$200 per thousand difference right now. But that's enough that you've got to take that into account. So it's soybeans, canola, and sunflowers are your viable choices. Everything else doesn't make nearly as much money. The benefit I have is if somehow I do determine that I'm sticking with crops, is because I'm leasing things. Like, it's not as if I have to have 2 headers around. I just lease the corn header when I need it, for the sunflowers, and then I lease a grain header if I'm doing canola or soybeans. But right now, this is the thing. How do I make up $32,000? And until these 2 lines do something more than all the other red numbers outside of land purchase, means I'm losing money. Means I'm not doing well. And I think what masks this is the loan capability. So if you don't know how to run financial analyses and you don't know how to look at models, you're going to be like, well, I have money. I'm doing fine. People may not go bankrupt within the first generation, but if the model is really laying out as it's appearing, it's going to become evident pretty quickly at some point if you can't get the white numbers to be larger than the red numbers pretty fast. And so again, I go back to the sunk cost piece where I'm like, well, I did crops. I can't do grass now because other people started grass and I can't catch them. And that's true. I can't catch them. But I can fall less further behind if I make the right decision as fast as I can. And right now, as fast as I can is I need to see this crop to fruition and I need to get it off the field. And then if I'm going with grass, I need to get it in the ground and I need to get it growing and I need to start pumping out silage. And like I said, right now, that's the model that makes sense. And again, I've also looked at baling and turning those into silage, because silage bales ferment fast enough that is potentially viable, but it's a wash in cost between a wrapper and a baler and the fermenting silo. So, and then you've got all that extra work and all that extra issue, and you've got repair, maintenance. So it very quickly becomes clear in any model, baling and wrapping much more costly than the fermenting silo. So, and like I said, some folks may have tested that, some folks may have done some other things and done some modeling. I certainly had in my head grass work might make sense, but I've done so well with crops, and crops do make money normally, but they make money when equipment isn't included in your costs. Once you start including equipment, which again we have to because we can't keep our equipment for more than 10 game years, and you're not going to generate enough crop income to even pay for your equipment in that time. So therefore, you have to consider it a cost because it's impacting whether you have 250,000 or less leaving this server or 250,000 or more. That's where I'm at. That's all I'm doing. This is, again, a lot less of a farming episode than it is a strategy episode. Hopefully it lets you in my head. And, I see I've got some folks commenting on the first episode. Very, very thankful for that. Glad people are enjoying the idea and, more importantly, enjoying the kind of the raw footage where you can hear my emotion in certain things, like when I'm throwing away $4,000 on a tractor because of a weird farming simulator problem. But I'm going to keep throwing these out there and just keep being as direct and honest as I can be, because that's how I operate, and I enjoy this stuff because it's a sim, and simming this in the real world means real world models work on it, and the real world models that I've run and the analysis that I've run, which again I've got a lot of background on doing this stuff, right now I'm not seeing a promising path. Let me just say that. I obviously am leaving things open for the results to start to shift my view, but I feel I've got enough background in the farming simulator engine and models and how the finances work that I'm definitely in the 90+% comfort level that the only thing that is going to be viable is grass. I just don't think crops are going to do it, because you need too much varied equipment, and the fact, and again, it's that razor thin margin. Even growing, even paying for seed and so forth is enough to throw you into a loss instead of a profit. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'll see you next time.